All right, guys, welcome to another episode of How We Disney. Today, we're going to talk about our favorite rides at Disney parks around the world. So we've already done Disney World, but today we're going to cover the favorite rides from the 12 Disney parks that we've visited, and we're going to kind of get started with that here tonight.
Yeah, this one for me was a bit tricky, but at the same time really fun. I think the hardest thing for me was remembering all the rides that exist. But I think we're going to have stuff different on this. Probably more different than maybe some of our other episodes. So I'm really curious to kind of go in, and picking 10 was hard, but I think I have a good 10.
Yeah, and since they are probably going to be different, we'll keep track from here on screen so we kind of can keep track as we go through, because there could ultimately, I guess, be up to 20 different rides mentioned tonight, although I'm sure we have a few in common, but we'll keep track of them here so that you can kind of follow along. But with that, do you kind of want to go with your 10th favorite ride?
All right, so my 10th favorite ride out of all Disney rides in existence is Pooh's Honey Hunt.
Okay,
so
nice.
Is Pooh's Honey Hunt on your list?
It is on my list,
okay.
Yeah. So it is number 9 on my list, so that's pretty close.
Yeah, so I actually, good job by us for being similar. So for me, the reason...
Well, before you get into the reason, where is it?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Since it's all 12 parks.
Yeah, so this is not the Disney World Pooh ride. So this is Pooh's Honey Hunt is in Disneyland at Tokyo Disney. So of the two Tokyo Disney parks, it's in the Tokyo Disneyland Park. It is a newer ride there, I believe, so I'm not sure what year it's from, but it has some new technologies, but yeah, it's part of the Tokyo Disney. Any other background we should give before jumping into?
Yeah, it's a trackless ride,
yeah.
So at the time, we had ridden it before we rode anything in Disney World that was trackless. There's some other trackless rides around the world, but that one was the first one I think we had ridden.
Yeah. So I think...
Oh, it wasn't the first one we'd ridden, but yes.
Yeah, I think we had done Ratatouille before that. But,
exactly.
But I feel like this one is such a good one in that it still does the Pooh story. It has some similarities in the feelings that you still see the characters from Pooh, just like you do in Disney World, but that trackless aspect makes the ride do a lot more. So for me, the things that kind of stand out and why this one made my list is you do get sucked into the Pooh story. So I think the theming is very good. I think they have some really fun aspects with it. So for me, the part that probably stands out the most is Tigger. So you're with Tigger and he's bouncing. And so in Disney World, you just kind of like rock back and forth. You get that here too, but you're facing him. But it's also in Japanese, which for me, that adds some more fun too, in that you're hearing them kind of sing the songs in Japanese. And so I think that it's just a really impressive ride. The trackless ride just moves so smoothly, but it also has some really kind of fun, I'm laughing on the ride, and it's just a lot to take in. So I think kind of the technology behind the ride and the story of it definitely set it up where it had to be on my list.
Yeah, so everything Sarah said is true for me as well, except the Tigger scene isn't my favorite. My favorite's actually... it's Owl and Piglet, and there's a giant storm or a twister or something going on, and they're all flying around, and you see Owl up in his house, and the whole tree is swaying back and forth, and your cars are kind of swerving in and out of them. And I just still remember the first time we rode this, the room where you go in, and it's the Hufflepuffus?
Hufflepuffs and Woozles.
Yeah, that one. So that's a really fun room because you're interacting with so many different vehicles, and it looks like there's no direction, there's no rhyme or reason to how people are moving, but after you ride it a couple of times, you realize, if you go this direction, this is where you're headed next, and if you go this other direction, then you're going to skip this part of the room. And the way they incorporate this trackless ride, these vehicles, in a way that you just could never, ever experience on a ride with tracks is just so awesome that... Yeah, this is an awesome ride for that reason. And at the end, you get this awesome little smell of honey to end the ride that I still remember today after, it's been a few months since we've been there. And that's one of my favorite smells in all of Disney World is that last room as well. So
yeah, I completely agree with that. And I also think the aspect you brought up in that room where all the cars are going, the fact that you can get like one thing that happens one ride and then you get a different thing at the next ride. I didn't know that was the case the first time we rode it. It was like kind of, and then it happened. We rode it again later and we're like, wait, we didn't see this before. And so I like when Disney has that where there is some difference and each time you ride or there can be a difference. I think that it's a good one. It's definitely a popular one. So that is one you definitely want to try to, like, everyone goes and tries to grab a fast pass for. You want to try to get a fast pass for in Tokyo. But I think it kind of is justified. So it's a really good one. For me, yeah, it has to be on my list. It's number 10, so just barely made it, but it still made it. So do you have anything else to add about?
No, it's an awesome ride, and it definitely is on my top 10 as well.
Yeah, so what was your number 10 then, if that was your 9?
Yeah. My number 10 is in Disney World, and it is at Animal Kingdom, and it's the Safari ride.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the Safari made my list. It's not the most thrilling ride, but it is, I think, probably one of, if not the most unique rides that you can do in any Disney park around the world. I just love the interactiveness of you getting to be with animals, and those animals aren't in cages. They're not being told when or where or how to move. You know, sometimes you get to see them eating, sometimes you get to see them sleeping, sometimes the lions are roaring, or we've seen giraffes running around. So this ride, I think, more than any other ride, changes completely depending on what time of day it is, what month it is. You know, is it sunny? Is it rainy? You know, is it 10 minutes later than he wrote on it last time? So I love the aspect of just how unpredictable this ride is as well. So just the interaction with the animals, it's just a really fun ride that I don't think you can really do in a theme park anywhere else. I mean, sure, you can go on an actual safari, but, you know, this is the epitome of, I think, Disney Imagineering and making the magic happen.
Mm-hmm. So this one's actually not on my list, but
Okay.
it was one of my close calls for sure. And I think that you hit on a lot of the things. I think the other things that make it unique is not only do the animals change, but the cast members have a script, but they don't have a script. So you can get different facts. So I like that aspect. And it does tie in, like you said, to the educational aspect. And so Disney, I think, wants to kind of share conservation and knowledge and facts and learning. So I think that's what makes it different from like an amusement park. And yeah, so I think all of those reasons are easy for why it's such a great ride. So I think that's a really good choice for top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I love also that you go through so many different habitats or environments too. So it's not just like you're going out on the safari in the savannah. It's you get to see hippos, you get to see alligators, you get to see lions and giraffes and flamingos and everything in between. So I just think the variety of this ride keeps you interested every single time you go on it. It's not just I've ridden it once, okay, you know, I'll do it again sometime down the road. It's every time you ride it, it's enjoyable and fun.
Yeah, and I think I think the fact that it is only in one park and probably will only ever be in one park, like I can't see them ever having the space in any of the other Disney parks to ever put this, but I think that makes it extra special too. So I think all the things you said plus that, yeah, that's a really good number 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to go with my number 9 then?
Yeah, go for 9.
All right, so my number 9 is in Shanghai Disney.
Okay.
So for Shanghai Disney, they only have one park there, and my number 9 is the Challenge Trails. So is the Challenge Trails on yours?
It is on mine, and it is number 8.
No, okay, so I'm like leading up to yours. All right, so do you want to talk about it?
Sure.
Okay.
So when I said that the Safari is one of the most unique rides in all of Disney, the only other ride I was thinking of as being equally unique are the Challenge Trails. So this is not your typical, I guess, theme park attraction. These are adventure courses or challenge trails. You get strapped into a harness, and there's 3 different courses you pick, and you kind of go on this adventure where you go over logs and you go across ravines and you climb up things and you go behind and around waterfalls, and it's relatively dangerous. And across each of these 3 trails, you know, there's an easy, medium, and hard one in addition. So there's really 9 different versions of this attraction. And I don't think it'll ever go anywhere near the United States. I mean, I just can't imagine. We did it the first time we did it, and I cut my hand open on it, and it just seemed like that was probably going to be the norm for this adventure. Yeah, it's really fun. It's hard to kind of describe without seeing visuals of it, but I guess it's just kind of you go on an adventure where you're strapped in, that's your safety, but there's not cast members around, and there's 1 or 2 out there, and you're just kind of left on your own to navigate through these obstacles and make your way back. I mean, it's definitely safe in that you're not going to break your leg or, you know, fall from 2 stories up, but you're going to get a bruise or 2, and you could easily trip and, you know, fall and have your harness catch you or things like that. But it's really fun.
Yeah, I would say that this is one so the reason, again, you hit on a lot of this stuff for me. The uniqueness of it definitely is what makes it so appealing to me as a ride. I think even though there are no other experiences like it, I think it is still really fun. I think the reason or the things that maybe make it not a number one for me, but still in my top 10 are it is challenging. So I don't think everyone can do this, but for us, like, that makes it kind of exciting, and that you have to still have like some kind of balance or strength to do most of them. You can kind of choose like this obstacle. So it could be anything from like walking across a bridge where the steps are like a foot apart or something like that, to going along a cliff edge. So they had everything in between. But when you got to one, it kind of, you could even move between the easy and medium hard per like obstacle you got to. So I think that it was just so unique, so fun. We did it multiple times to check out. So I think it would hold because you can only do it there, the uniqueness of it. I agree. If you've done like an adventure ropes course, it's the same type of idea.
That's exactly it. A ropes course is the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
so come up with.
Yeah, so it's like that. I would say that there are some cast members on there, but there's not a ton. So that kind of adds to the adventure in that you have to kind of figure it out. If you did find a cast member and you don't speak Chinese, that also would kind of potentially make it a little bit trickier, but it's so fun. It's just one of those where it is kind of you're buying into the story, you're on an adventure, you're not in a Disney park at that time. And so, so for me, it stands out among all the rides and experiences kind of we've done in the different Disneys, and so it definitely was on my list.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that is my number 8.
So you're number 8. Okay, so we've got your 10.
So you've done number 9. My number 9 is Pooh's Honey Hunt. My number 8 is the Challenge Trails in Shanghai Disneyland. Okay. And what is your number 8?
My number 8 is Thunder Mountain in Disneyland Paris.
All right, nice. So it is not on my list. Okay. There are no Disneyland Paris rides on my list. I think that's a good one, though. That's
the only one that made my list from Disneyland Paris. And the reason that it made my list is, so Thunder Mountain in general, I'd say wouldn't make my list. So if you said only Thunder Mountain and Disney World, I might be like, meh. But the Disneyland Paris specifically for me made the list because it's the best one. So I love Thunder Mountain. I love the theming of Thunder Mountain. So the ride, we always laugh on it before. So when we were ranking our Disney rides, we talked about how we laughed. But for me, the reason Disneyland Paris is better is it's on an island. And so that makes it unique and to me kind of stands out. But getting to the island is what's fun, and getting off the island, I guess. So it seems to go faster, and it's a longer ride than the other parks. And it's hands down the one, I think, when we were in Paris, or anytime we're in Paris, we're like, all right, what do we want to do? All right, let's go Fast Pass Thunder. All right, what do we want to do now? Let's Fast Pass Thunder. So it's just the one, like, I feel like if we weren't sure, it's always, like, going to that one. And so for me, Thunder Mountain's a great ride in any of the Disney parks, but especially the Disneyland Paris one, for me was enough to make it on my list and put it above some of my other rides as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That is the best ride in Disneyland Paris. I mean, it didn't make my top 10, but is our favorite ride there. And yeah, the island is so much fun. You go underneath the water to get to it. So the first time you ride it, if you didn't know what you were doing, you would just think you were in a tunnel. And then you'd be out on this island, and then you'd go back under a tunnel to come back to the loading area. But after you ride it a couple times, you realize, hey, we're actually going under the water. It's not just a tunnel or a cave that we're going through. We're going out to this island, and that actually adds a lot of fun to it. I'm not sure why it adds fun to it, but it definitely does. And for that reason, it is definitely my favorite Thunder Mountain of all the ones I've been on.
Yeah, when I was making my list, I realized, like, thrill rides, apparently it's, like, not full-blown thrill, but having the thrill or the extra speed. I do think that one part of the tunnel feels a lot longer and faster. I don't know if it's because you're just in the dark or what it is, but, yeah, for me, that the theming of the ride, it rings true to Disney, where I feel like you're in Thunder Mesa there, and so the Thunder Mountain is located in that area, and it just, to me, is a great ride, so that's why I kind of made it on my list.
All right.
So that was my number 8. Do you want to do your number 7?
Yeah. So number 7 for me is Journey to the Center of the Earth in Tokyo Disney, and it's at the Disney Sea Park. So for me, this ride is just so strange and so unexpected once you go on it. So I guess I'll even start with the queue. The queue for this ride is amazing. It starts out where you're in this cave, and they've just paid so much attention to detail. And like, there's this water fountain where it used to be, I think, a double fountain, and they have made molten rock cover one of the fountain parts. So they've taken attention to detail when doing that. They have all these relics and these things in cages that you can look at as you're going through it. But then you get up to the elevator. And this elevator, if you've ever ridden, I guess, in Universal, it's kind of like the Gringotts elevator where you have this great sense that you're going down, 1,000 floors, and it's simulating all this movement and everything. And you're heading down into this giant cavernous room where you reach these, I guess, rock dwelling or these rock, like
a cave with like stalactites
yeah.
and stalagmites. Yeah.
So you hit here, and then you get on these cars, and you kind of just go on this adventure to the center of the earth, and you come across these different little creatures as you're going, and then you hit finally this giant beast or creature or animal thing, I don't know what it is, and you kind of take off to escape from that, and you reach outside. And it's just all these different elements that on their own are just really weird when you experience it, that they just fit so well together here in this ride that once you do it once, you kind of, at least my experience was, you get off, you're like, that was kind of not what I thought it would be. And then you do it again, and you decide that it's probably one of the best rides in any Disney park in the world. And you get back on, and you keep getting back on. And it really doesn't even matter how long the queue is.
Yeah, so that is my number 6. So it's your number
nice.
7, right?
Yes, number 7.
So yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think for me, it was definitely the first time we rode it, people had said it was really good. So we didn't really know what to expect, but people were like, oh, it's amazing. Like, you're going to love it. And so we rode it, and I was like, it was only okay. Like, I really wasn't sure. And then it's one of my favorite rides. So, like, for me, number 6 out of all Disney rides. So, yeah, it's definitely one of those. It has, I guess, like, some older elements in that some of the, like, technology is not the same as maybe some of the brand new rides in Disney, but for me, the part that just like stands out is you think you're done with the ride. So you're at the bottom, you're at the center of the earth, you have that like lava monster, I don't know
whatever
what he
is. Yeah.
And then you go out from the center of the earth. So you're basically coming back to the surface. And that trip back to the surface, you think it's like going pretty good and you're picking up speed, but then you get one part, and I swear every time my butt is off the seat.
Yep.
So you have lap bars, but it just is insanely fun. So that part is good, and every time we rode it, it's, even though I knew it was coming, it was still just as good as before.
It is every time.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, the details are so cool. The vehicles, even of themselves, the theming on this ride is just absolutely incredible. And I do think that Tokyo Disney just does a great job of keeping everything impeccable and just so well done. And I think this ride is just kind of the epitome of that. Like, it just has so much attention to detail. So I think hands down, it's an amazing ride. Like, you cannot, in my opinion, go to Tokyo Disney and not go on this ride. Like, it is a hands down must do. Again, the lines can get really long. The fast passes will go away. But this is the must do ride for me out of that Tokyo Disney Sea. Like, you have to do it.
Awesome
Probably
ride.
out of all of Tokyo. Yeah, it's so good. I'm trying to think. I'm worried I'm missing something on my list for later. But yeah, no, it's a really good one.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so that was my number 6.
My number 7.
So
what's
we
your
need
number
my number 7. Okay, so my number 7 is hinted at my shirt. So it is Radiator Springs Racers.
Nice.
So this is the Cars ride. So I always call it the Cars ride. In Disney's California Adventure. So this is Disneyland, California, their DCA park. Cars Land in and of itself is really good, but for me, this ride is on my list. First, I should say, is it on your list?
It is.
It is. Okay.
My number 6.
No, so okay, we switched again. But yeah, so for me, it's like the theming and part of Cars Land, and it's just such a fun ride and has so many different kind of things that bring you into the story. What about for you?
Yeah, I think that this is everything you want Test Track to be. It has awesome storytelling. The theming throughout the whole thing is just amazing. I love how it kind of tells the story as you go, as you're, kind of getting ready, prepping for this race, and then you have this awesome race through Monument Valley. And then you return and you get to see all the characters and everything like that. I say the only knock on this ride is actually the queue. The queue is very boring. It's just kind of an outdoor queue. But the ride itself, I just absolutely love. I love when you're inside and there's Mater and the cow tipping or the tractor tipping, whatever it is. And then you see Luigi and he helps you prep your tires and everything. And then yeah, it's a really fun ride where there's just an awesome storytelling going on with it as well.
Yeah. And so you can get Luigi, or you can get the other room where you get the paint job.
Yeah.
So so this goes back to kind of the Pooh Honey Hunt, where you could have like different experiences depending riding it. So I think that aspect also, like the first time we ride it, we didn't know there was another room, and then eventually we got the other room and we're like, wait a second, like what is this? And so I think you really feel like you're Cars Land in DCA, you feel like you're in Cars Land already, and then you go on that ride and like you're in the Cars movie. And even if you haven't seen the Cars movie, it's still themed enough that you know you're not anywhere you've ever been before. And so I think it's just so good theming. And I do agree that the outdoor part is fun in that you have kind of like the speed around a bank, but you also have like a little bit of like up and a down. And so I think they just pulled in so many good outside when you're outside of the building dynamics as well. You see the whole Monument Valley with the waterfall. And so I think that they just did really, really great attention to detail on this ride as well. And yeah, it's just a very memorable ride, and you can do it multiple times.
Yeah, I even like that there's a little sense of competition in it, right? There's 2 cars, so you're actually the whole idea is you're getting ready for this race, and when you race, you're racing the other group. So even that is kind of just an added little thing that they didn't have to put in, but just kind of makes it even more enjoyable. So this is an awesome ride, and it's definitely my favorite ride in DCA.
Yeah, I agree. And going to the competition, we had a friend who said that whatever car gets their seatbelts in fastest is the one that wins. We've only maybe tested this theory once, and we won, but if you want to go try it and see if it works for you. But it's just a great ride. The competitive aspect is fun. So I think it's just a really, really great ride in all of those aspects.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So that was my number 7. That was your number 6 then.
Yeah. So we've already done my 6, so it's on to your 6.
My 6 was Journey.
All right, so we're on to 5.
Okay, we've had more in common than I thought we would.
I did not think we'd have this many in common. So do you want to do your 5 or mine?
I'll go.
All right, go for it. What's your 5th favorite ride? We're getting to the top half.
Yes, okay. So now we're getting serious. All right, my number 5 ride in all the Disney parks is Mystic Manor.
Oh, okay.
Is it yours?
It is.
Is it your number 5?
No, it's on.
Oh, okay.
It's in my list.
Okay.
It's not my number 5. It is higher.
It is higher. Okay, so
I'll just tell you, it's my number 3 favorite ride in all Disney parks.
Top 3. Oh,
Top
wow.
3.
Okay, so I feel like in that case, you should talk about it first.
Start out.
All right, so first, Mystic Manor, I guess we should say, is in Hong Kong Disneyland. So Hong Kong Disneyland only has one theme park. So of the park, I would say, for me, this is hands down the best ride in Hong Kong Disneyland. The ride is going to be a trackless ride. For me, of the trackless rides, it's very, very well done. But the fact that it's trackless isn't the only reason it ranked so high on my list. I think the story of this ride is just so good. So the basic story is that you have Lord Mystic, is it Henry Mystic?
Yep.
And so he is there, and he has all of these artifacts that he's collected, and you're going to take a tour through his home, and his monkey Albert, which is his sidekick, kind of touches one of the artifacts, and it brings
the music box.
Oh, the music box. Thank you. And it brings everything to life. And so you're going around and kind of exploring the house. Albert gets into a little bit of trouble. But it's just such an incredibly themed ride. I think we probably rode it a dozen times in a 2-day trip. So granted, the park was really quiet, but it is just a phenomenal ride. So I'll let you kind of...
Yeah, so for me, this ride has the best storytelling in all of Disney. So this ride has no thrill aspect to it. So the only reason it ranks high for me is the storytelling. So you are in there, as Sarah said, and you're looking through all these different rooms. You go through like a music room, you go through a plant room, you go through a room with armor and tikis, and you just go through all these different rooms, kind of following along as everything's coming to life thanks to this music box. And then finally in this last room, you kind of have some destruction happening, and you get taken back to the main entrance room where Lord Henry Mystic comes out and kind of inquires as to what's going on, and Albert claims, nothing's happening, we're all fine, and you kind of then return back to the beginning. But really, when you're in this ride, you're just completely engulfed in this story, and for that reason, I think that it is absolutely my favorite. I think it'd probably be my favorite if it wasn't even a trackless ride, which does kind of add some interactive elements that a normal track ride couldn't. But just, the storytelling in this is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. So everything from the house. It maybe has a little bit of a haunted mansion-ish feel, but it's more
From the outside,
adventurous.
it definitely does. From the inside,
it's not
a little
scary.
less so.
Yeah. But yeah, you get roped in straight from the get-go. The Albert is the cutest, and so I think he's a perfect kind of person to take you through the story, or monkey to take you through the story. And yeah, it's just so well done. I think there's maybe a slight variation depending which way you go at one part, so that does add a little bit of a twist, but it has just not even just that, if that little aspect was in there, there's just so much to take in that I feel like the details, you could ride it that many times and you still want to go more and experience it and see what else you notice. And so, yeah, for me, it's just a phenomenal ride, in my opinion. If you go to Tokyo Disney, like, this is it. You have to do this ride.
But you mean
I'm sorry,
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Yep. So, too many rides. But, yeah, it's the must-do for Hong Kong. Thank you.
Yeah, and I really like, it even ties in the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, and you go through the queue and you get some history of that. And the whole thing just is, in my mind, a perfect ride when it comes to the story. So for that reason, it's my number 3, and obviously it's Sarah's number 5, so it is an awesome ride, definitely, either way.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so
that was your number 5?
Yeah, so what was your number 5?
My number 5 is Sinbad's Storybook Adventure, and this is in Tokyo Disney at Disney Sea. And this is a dark ride. You're riding along in a boat. You are following Sinbad and Shandu kind of on this adventure as they go and try and rescue this giant. And you're kind of just floating along. And I would say it's, what do you think it is? 15 minutes probably, at least, or so? I mean, it's a very long ride, and you're engulfed in another story here that this is why this ride's good. It's not a thrill ride either, but it just tells this fantastic story of this adventure that these two go on, Sinbad and his tiger, and how they're kind of fighting these evil ninja type people and trying to rescue this or free this free this giant from a cell. And just, you kind of just get wrapped up in this one as well. And even when this one's over, or you think it's over, it continues on with another room and another small adventure with some, I think, monkeys at the end. And then you finally make it home. And yeah, for this one, I think one of the main reasons it ranks so high on my list is the music.
Yes.
I would argue this has the most memorable music of any ride in Disney, with maybe the exception of It's a Small World. And I don't enjoy the Small World music, but I think everybody knows that music. But for me, this is probably the most memorable and enjoyable music in any ride I've ever been on.
I completely agree. So this did not make my list, but I guessed it would make yours. I think it is still great. So I think the reason it didn't make my list is I feel like you wrote it the first time and you instantly loved it. I think it's definitely one for, like, Disney fans. So if you love, like, Disney details and Disney theming, it does have similarities to Small World, but it is so much better. Like, the story is so much better. The rooms are massive. The characters are massive. And I don't think we've ever actually Googled the true story of, like, what the ride should be telling. And it is the song that takes you through, and it is, I think maybe some parts are in English, but, like, it's not clear from just that, like, what the story is, but because you have all the really good, like, storytelling with the animatronics and all of that, it's just such a good ride. When we were there with my sister, I remember the first time we took her on it, we were like, oh, we gotta go do Sinbad, and it's usually a walk-on, like, it's not usually a huge wait. We wrote it, she's like, what? Like, this is it, guys? And we're like, no, we'll do it again. It's okay, you'll get it.
You don't understand.
You don't understand. And she's a Disney fan, but maybe not quite to our level, but she still likes it. But by the end of it, I feel like we at least converted her a little bit.
Yep.
But the song is so good. I cannot sing, but it goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so, like, it's Google it. I can't, or whatever, YouTube it. It is just so good, and it's so catchy. And it's one of those, honestly, I think after riding it once, it kind of, like, loops through in different variations, but it is stuck in your head, but in the best way.
Yeah, and so what do you think the story is? Like, so they start out on this adventure on a boat, and they have to go, I think, find this giant eagle bird and get one of its feathers to release this giant. And along the way, they run into, like I said, these ninja people who are trying to stop them, who are also trying to go get this feather. And finally, Sinbad, I think, gets the feather. You see him release it, and then on their way home, they must run into a band of crazy monkeys with bananas, and they escape that before I guess ultimately finding their way home, maybe on the back of a giant whale or something to do with a giant whale.
The whale shows up somewhere, I think before the monkeys, if I remember it, but I think it's, you're just going along on his kind of adventure, but I do think the giant is like one of the big points of it. I think for me, the song stands out a lot. The like rooms are very big. But also Shandu. So Shandu is the tiger, and he is just the cutest. So that's Jeff's shirt, if you're wondering what it is. But yeah, he is just you like Sinbad anyways, and you like the song. But like for me, like whenever I go to the room, I'm, where's Shandu? All right, where do I find him? And he's always like up to something fun. Like at one point, I think he's like jumping on a drum, and
I think he's buried in bananas. Coins, and yeah, he's in all the rooms. So you can find him. Yeah,
he is just, to me, adds like that extra kind of character and humor and cuteness. And so I think for me, that is a great ride. It didn't quite make my list just because other ones for me personally beat it out, but it's still like a really good one. But I'd say for me, it's a really good one for like hardcore Disney fans. If you're there to go on like thrill rides, then you might ride it the first time and be like, what is Jeff talking about? But I think if you are a Disney fan, no one's going to argue with you that this is just easily, what was it, your number? 5. Okay, yeah, so.
Fifth favorite ride in the world.
Yeah, all right. And I still agree with you that it is an amazing ride. Yeah. So just personally for me, it didn't get on my list, but it is, I love it. So for me, I can't not ride it if I'm in Tokyo.
All right.
Yeah. All right, so your 5 was that. Mine was Mystic, and then 4.
What's your number 4?
My number 4. Okay. For me, my number 4 is Splash Mountain. And when I was trying to decide on which Splash Mountain, so for me, Splash Mountain is one of my favorite rides. And I have a hard time, though, which version. So do I want the Disney World one or Tokyo is basically the two that I go between. I know Disneyland also has it. Splash Mountain and Disney World I like because you have like the 2 seats and it's, I guess, our home park. But also the Tokyo one is so clean. So for me, maybe Tokyo wins out a little bit. But for me, the reason Splash Mountain ranked so high, or why it is on my list as number 4, is because it is just such a well-themed ride. And to me, this is truly like Disney theming. When I think about Disney, like Splash Mountain comes to mind. The songs are great, so you have great theming, great songs, and the thrill. So for me, it combines like everything that I love about Disney. So you get the exciting drop. Everyone is scared, I feel like, the first time, even if you've done some crazy roller coasters. But you get all the characters. You get the story of Brer Fox and Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear and all of them, and all the classic songs. So I feel like you'll hear Zippity Doo Dah and you think of Splash Mountain. So all of these reasons kind of combine into why I just absolutely love this ride and why it ranks so high on my list.
Yeah, so it didn't make my list, but the storytelling in this is really good. I do like the small thrill aspects. You get little drops here and there, kind of building up the anticipation until you finally get to that one big last one. And yeah, I mean, it's a really fun ride. It does have some awesome storytelling. It didn't make my top 10, but honestly, it's probably just outside of it. So I understand why it would be a top ride. I actually think I do like Tokyo's better. I think it's cleaner. I think the story's more enjoyable, or at least maybe I like the story better just because it's different, and I haven't ridden it as much as the one here. But it's generally the same story. There's just a few scenes that are different, and I do like the storytelling in this. So I have to say it's an awesome story that kind of progresses throughout, and I do really like in the Disney World one all the different views you get as you kind of come around a corner or you get up to that top drop and you can see the castle in different ways. You can kind of look out over Tom Sawyer's area and all these different views of the park, which I think is a really cool little added, I guess, part to this ride that you wouldn't normally expect to find on it.
Yeah, I think it is just one of those like classic Disney rides. And so for me, the kind of classic aspect of it, again, the music for me really, music for me is what kind of gets that emotion going. And so there's different songs and the variety of songs that you get in this ride and how it changes kind of your feelings as it goes along is another huge aspect. So for me, yeah, the theming, the music, and the characters, and definitely the thrill of the drop. Yeah. And you get wet, but you don't always get like soaked. So you may get soaked, but usually not. So yeah, all those reasons kind of combined to why it made my number 4.
Nice. Right. So on to my number 4, right?
Yes.
Okay, so my 4th favorite ride is Flight of Passage in Disney World's Animal Kingdom. And for this ride, I think I don't know how they do it because I don't really enjoy just purely screen rides, but there's something about this one that just kind of makes you forget where you are, and maybe it's the fact that the banshees breathe and there's air blowing in your face and there's smells and there's just enough movement to make you think that you're actually on it. And the 3D glasses work really well on this ride, and I think all these little things added together kind of overcome my dislike, I guess, for in general for just screen rides. But this one, ever since it opened, has been one of my favorite rides in Disney World. It's just so thrilling, but at the same time, it's a ride that anybody can do. I love the way that they've incorporated it into this giant mountain. So walking through the queue, whether it be up to the mountain and the waterfalls and through all the foliage, or whether it be inside as you're walking through the labs, even into the room where you get to hear the pre-ride talk about getting matched with your Banshee and everything. The whole ride just really fits together well. I do love how, I guess, the ride's kind of broken into two parts once you're in the thing. I like how at the beginning you're kind of on this quick adventure and then you get attacked and then you have a minute to breathe before going on, I guess, more of a scenic adventure after that. And overall, I think this ride is a really enjoyable addition to the parks and one that I envision I'll probably continue to like for years to come.
Yeah, no, I agree. So this is actually my number 3 ride. So
Nice.
I just bumped it up. But yeah, for me, Flight of Passage, the technology is so good that you really do believe you're in there. But again, leading up to it, like you mentioned, like getting paired with your avatar and having it where you're kind of getting prepped, and they give you plenty of warnings of like if you don't think you can do it, and usually we're with people more in line, we're like, you can do it, like you got it. Maybe if you get like some big motion sickness, you want to pass, but for the most part you could probably shut your eyes and it would be okay if you're on there and you can't. But it is just such a good one. I agree, like visually it's stunning, so it like just the imagination it takes to create kind of Pandora, and then Disney with this ride just really brought it where you're in this ride. And for me, having the Banshee breathe is really cool, but also it's the smells and the music. So again, for me, like music, I guess one of my takeaways for what makes a good ride. But you hear the song, you have the music, but there's also all the smells that are going on, and that just gets you even more kind of immersed in this world. And there's kind of like some excitement and scary parts, and you're really kind of on this adventure and part of this story. And so I think just how much it sucks you into it is so amazing, and the technology and how they did it is just very well done too. So I think that all in all, it's just a phenomenal ride. I think everything's like you said, from the queue all the way through. Pretty much anytime we get off the ride, I feel like we're walking out, and if you're with somebody that it's their first time, because they're like, oh my god, like that was amazing. So it can have pretty long lines still.
Yeah, very long.
So again, if you can get a fast pass, I would say that's usually the best bet. But even if you can't, I would still try to like get there early and do it, or maybe try to catch it late at night if the lines died down. But it's one of those rides that just is so good.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So on to number 3 for me.
Yeah.
Is Mystic Manor, which you already talked about.
All right, and so we're in our top 2 then.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they're the same rides, maybe in the same order. I don't know.
Okay, so what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Sunken Treasure in Shanghai Disney.
We flip-flopped. So
okay, nice.
So for
that's
me,
your number 1.
That's my number 1. So do you want to talk about it, and then we'll go to your number 1?
Yeah, so similar in a sense to Flight of Passage, this is a screen ride, except that this one incorporates a large amount of, I guess, real props or 3D props or, physical props. So I love how this one integrates the two together into one ride. It is a huge boat ride. I mean, this is not your typical Pirates of the Caribbean sized boat that you would find in Tokyo, Disneyland, Disney World. This thing, I think, held 25 or 30 people, rows of 5. So it is just a massive scale. But the way you're kind of progressing through this ride and the scenes, I think they just kind of keep getting grander and grander as you go, is what really blew me away the first time I rode this. So you are on this boat and you're kind of progressing through this treasure room, and you're eventually making your way through this underwater scene where you're seeing all the characters from the movie, and then you finally get to what's the evil guy's name? I guess Davy Jones maybe, or I don't remember.
Barbosa on the show.
The octopus guy is playing a piano or an organ, and then you finally go out and through these doors that open up in front of you to what I think is probably the main scene of this entire ride, and you rise up from the bottom of the ocean to kind of attack these pirate ships on the surface, and this is part of the screen, and then you turn to your left as you come through here, and there you are in the middle of a scene with life-size pirate ships. They're blowing them up, and Johnny Depp's in one, and Barbossa's in the other, or Jack Sparrow's in one, and you kind of find your way through one of these pirate ships, and you're in this battle between the two of them, and then finally the ride concludes, and just the way that they've integrated the props with the screens is, to me, amazing. It just engulfs you in this ride fully by making the things that they could make out of physical props and then kind of amplifying that effect with things that they really couldn't do by tying in these screens. And even the way that the water level, I think, matches like the water on the screen, you really have to pay attention to where does the physical water end and where does the screen begin at times. So it's just an awesome ride. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, so for me, the reason it's my number one and beat out our number two, which I know is your number one. So for me, the reason it beat it out is it does tie to traditional Disney. So Disneyland has the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Like most Disney parks have a version of Pirates of the Caribbean. And so the ride starts off almost feeling similar to those. So they did a good job of tying it in. You have the dog and the people with the bone, but I think they're all skeletons, or it's not. So they have nods to that, and you start off feeling very much you're going through scenes, and it's not that exciting or screen based. And then for me, one of the things that stands out is the two ships Jeff talked about is definitely the like jaw to the floor moment. But before you even get to that part, you get to a scene where you have Jack Sparrow, and so it's a transition where it goes from, I think, skeleton, so he's skeleton, and then you get Jack and he comes alive. And so we kept riding it, and we're like, how did they do that? Because it went from like a skeleton to like an actual animatronic thing, a real Jack Sparrow. And so it's basically taking you from where the pirates are dead to where the pirates are now back alive. And I believe that's the transition of the story. So, but yeah, it's just, it has so many things that we wrote it many times, and I still couldn't figure out certain things of them. How'd they do that? Yep. But just, yeah, the scale of it. So I think it has that traditional story, but the scale of some of those rooms is just amazing. The fact it is a water ride is awesome and brings you into kind of that adventure. And for me, there's just a lot of different aspects that to me, feel very Disney, and that's why it snuck above my number two. And there is a small, like, backwards drop-ish thing. So there is a little bit of a thrill there as well. But to me, this just they took a Disney ride that's a traditional Disney ride and made it something, in my opinion, no other Disney rides can be. Like, I just absolutely love it. My number two is very close. I think it just comes down to preferences. And for me, the Pirates ride, the theming, the ride itself is just insanely good.
Yeah, my number one ride is going to be, could have been flip-flopped with this one. So they're both almost, I would say, equal in quality. But yeah, everything that Sarah just mentioned is absolutely true about this Pirates ride. It's one of a kind. Yeah. And I would say that a reason I do also like it is that at least when we were in Shanghai, it didn't have a long line usually. No.
And so it
what
was...
What do you think? 10 minutes was the longest we waited. Yeah,
it was, and even I think if it did say like 15 or 10, it was almost a walk-on. So like
yeah,
I feel like it was how long
the queue took 10 minutes to walk through. So
and the queue had tons of details and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think that not only is it a phenomenal ride, it's just one of those where I was like, why is nobody riding this? Like everyone would run to Soarin', and we're like, Soarin's okay, but like it is just so good. But like also the ease of being able to ride it, at least for when we were there, made it an even better experience, I think. I think if you were in the queue, there's lots to look at, but we didn't ever have to worry about that. You could just walk right on without a fast pass. And so, yeah, for me, that is just an amazing ride. I agree, very close to my number two. So you want to talk about your number one, my number two?
Before we do that, if you do want to go on a full ride through of it, we do have that video, and we'll link it, up here somewhere. If you want to follow that, you're welcome to check that out. But yeah, so my number two ride was Pirates. Your number two ride then is probably going to be my number one ride. What is it?
Rise of the Resistance.
Yep, so that's my favorite ride, but you want to talk about it?
Sure. So Rise of the Resistance is a newer ride. It's going to be in Hollywood Studios at Walt Disney World, and it's going to be not your typical ride. So where I say pirates, you're on a boat and it takes you through the story. The reason Rise, I think, is so good is that you don't know when the ride starts. So you have a lot of stuff that is considered pre-show, maybe. So you have the queue, which the queue has a bunch of details. You're in the Resistant base. And the Resistance is recruiting you, and then you go and you get on a transport, and the transport gets intercepted. So I think technically when you're going to the transport, so like I think Rey shows up and she's like, come and help and thanks for joining us, and it sends you to the transport. I think that's officially probably where the ride starts, but even at that point, like there's so much more that happens before you get on like the actual ride, which is going to be a trackless vehicle. So this one just has so many different components, and you feel like you're part of Star Wars, that I think is just Disney people had really built up expectations for this ride, and I think they exceeded them. Like, no matter what you hear about this ride, if you haven't ridden it, you'll ride it, and no matter what we say, it's not going to build it up too high, I feel like.
No, I agree completely, yeah. So, for me, the reason it's number one is that the queue is also a ride, in my opinion, right? So, Sarah mentioned you first get recruited, and you see BB-8 and Rey, and then they rush you out, and the cast members are all in character and telling you to hurry, get on this transport, where you're now getting transported along through space, and then the Republic catches you, and they tell you, don't tell them anything, we're going to get boarded, and then you get caught in this tractor beam, and they pull you in on this ship, and you exit in an amazing way into this room that is just a scene that you couldn't believe unless you're actually in it. And then they interrogate you in this room. So even though you're in another little line here before you get on the actual ride itself, it doesn't seem that way because you're walking through hallways of a starship. And then the cast members here are now themed as Imperial troopers. And the entire thing up to this point isn't even the main part of the ride. So then you're put into a cell where you have to get interrogated by Kylo Ren, and then you break yourself out, and now the ride finally gets to start. And so, yeah, the trackless ride itself, even after all of this, is amazing, where you're kind of just flying around the inside of the ship trying to escape. You've got a droid helping you out. You see Finn on occasion throughout. Kylo's trying to catch you, and there's droids and stormtroopers shooting at you, and there's just props that are so large. There's AT-ATs that are huge. There's cannons that are blasting that you have to dodge. And finally, after an encounter with Kylo at the end, you make your way out and you escape before you're swept back outside to finish the ride. And just the enormity of this ride and the storytelling and the way that they make you feel like you're actually in a movie is why this one's my favorite by far. Well, I shouldn't say by far, but the top two are by far above any other rides.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, yeah, it just has so much going on. For me, like, we've talked about this before, but, like, the AT-AT room is just so impressive. The cannons are so impressive. I have had people that have said, like, hey, I heard there's a drop. And so, is the drop okay? I really think pretty much anyone can do this ride. There is a little bit of a drop, but it is not Tower of Terror. It is not anything big.
It is very
minimal.
And it's very smooth, so it's meant to simulate like zero gravity because you are in space in this ride. So you're not going down and hitting hard or anything like that. You're kind of getting launched in an escape pod at the very end out of this ride. So even if, you had someone who was afraid of it, by the time this actually happens, you only have about 20 seconds left in the ride anyways, and that's just really just getting you to the exit. So it's fine, and it's an absolutely awesome experience.
Yeah. So I would definitely say anyone can do it. You don't wear 3D glasses, which I think is nice. So if you do have somebody that has glasses, they don't have to worry about that aspect. Everything can just be taken in. And I know Star Wars, like I've watched the movies. I don't know all of the terms, but I'd say anything from like, if you don't know Star Wars at all, and this is your first time getting exposed to Star Wars, you're still going to love it. If you're a Star Wars fan, so we have like a few family members that are like big time Star Wars fans, and we've been on this with big time Star Wars fans. So we have friends that we went down with, and they're like big time Star Wars fans, and they still think it's absolutely amazing. So I think anybody in between can ride this ride, and regardless of your kind of knowledge of Star Wars, you're gonna get sucked in and you're gonna follow the story, and you're gonna, I imagine, come out saying like, that is amazing, like that is one of the coolest things I've ever done. So yeah.
So I guess ultimately for me, the reason this kind of snuck out to be number one is Pirates, I think, relies more heavily on screens, and then the physical props kind of complement that, whereas it's the opposite, I think, for me at least, in Rise of the Resistance. It relies more heavily on the physical props and you moving through these physical scenes, and then the screens in this ride are just there to complement with things that you couldn't normally do, simulating space, seeing these space cruisers, or things like that. So for me, I think that's why it snuck out a little bit above, because I do prefer rides with physical props or with physical environments. But yeah, this ride, the storytelling, the immersiveness, the way it makes you feel like you're just in the movies is really one of a kind.
Yeah, no, I think that is definitely fair. I think if I could have a 10-minute wait and just walk on this, I'd probably maybe get closer. But yeah, for me, Star Wars, amazing ride. It again, like you said, it's a coin toss, I guess. It's just personal preference for these two rides. They definitely stand out. For me, it's the kind of nostalgia factor of, even though it's Johnny Depp in the Pirates ride, and it's the new pirate movie types of themes, it still to me is like classic Disney. So for me, I guess that's why it edged out on me. But they're both just absolutely amazing rides. If you're in Shanghai, you have to do Pirates. Is it enough of a reason to go to Shanghai? Probably. So I would say if you're a big Disney fan and you need an excuse to go there, like go there for that.
Yep.
And if you're in Disney World, like definitely find a way to get on rides.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are just easily number 1 and 2. For me were easy. Like when we were making this list, like 1 and 2 done.
Yep.
And then kind of sorting out some of the rest of it took a little bit, but that was the easy part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else for you?
No, I think that's it. So thanks so much for tuning in. We will be back next week with another episode. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.